Hello, welcome to United Hour, your official redcafe.net podcast on all things Man United. My name's Imran.
I'm Colm.
And I'm Alex.
And we're recording now literally 10 minutes after the Brighton game has just ended, after 100 minutes of football. Very harsh on the heart.
Yeah, I'm struggling. I'm lying down, the laptop's on my chest. I'm just facing the ceiling. Don't plan on getting up for a while.
I was watching on BT Sport on my laptop, so actually my stream was like maybe 30 seconds behind.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, do I find out what's happened, or do I watch it fresh?
Oh, you have to watch it fresh. You have to watch it fresh.
I have to watch it fresh.
I'm an airplane mode kind of guy. You know, I don't want those spoilers. I was actually watching on a perfectly legitimate web-based stream up until like the 85th minute, and then I decided to go have a shower and just watch it in the shower. So that was a really, intense 15 minutes.
Let's backtrack. How do you watch something in the shower?
I just set it on the shower, and then I'm underneath the shower, soaping up and all that stuff. And it's
what,
just
your phone? Is your phone not getting wet?
Nah, it's above the shower head.
But
what like splashing off you, the steam.
Yeah, it's not that steamy. Like, it's a clear picture. It's an elite way to. I can't even have a shower without watching something, like whether it's YouTube or something.
I mean, we've heard it here first. Colm showers with Colm, not steamy.
Yeah, but it just made for really slippery celebrations.
Actually, wait. How low is your shower head?
Nah, I'm like 6'2", and the shower head is like above. Like the phone doesn't get wet. It's fine.
Right. I feel like this is, out of everything we talk about today, this is the thing that people want to go know more about. So all questions for Colm and his shower watching, please put them in the field.
Yeah, and what do you usually watch? No,
just anything.
We don't need to go into that.
You do, Alex. I know you do.
But yeah, so we've all just been witness to some daylight robbery down on the south coast. Unless anyone wants to... Does anyone think we deserve to win that game or even draw that game?
No, neither.
Not in the slightest.
Well, we did. Steve McManaman kept on saying in the commentary that 3 points is the most important thing at the start point of the season. To which I would argue 3 points is the most important part of any part of the season. But not a great performance from United. But we came away with a 3-2 win, and we're going to get into it. So I guess we should start right at the beginning. Alex, lineup. A lot of people retained and a lot of people dropped. So we had James going out and Timothy Fosu-Mensah coming out from the loss last weekend.
Fine, expected. The players who didn't return on time are now returned. They've done the quarantine. They were always going to play as soon as they could, I think. I think it was probably what everyone expected in pretty much every position. No? You disagree?
Well, were you not expecting Lindelof to maybe come out?
Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting one after the comments the other day. But no, I did think actually he would perhaps stick with Lindelof and he would hope that there would be a reaction to the comments and also like the press and whatnot. Because I think as soon as... You can go either way. You can say, some people might say, he wasn't strong enough to pull him out. But you could also say that, if he had... You're taking a player who's already maybe shown in the past that he reacts to confidence and what's going on in the media, and he would only be adding to that pressure. And maybe this was I'm backing you, but you need to repay me for this backing with a better performance.
I think Ole is quite obviously pragmatic in general, so I never expect big kind of statements. If he does make them, he tends to make them early and then stick by them. And to have your partnership that probably played, upwards of 30 games last year together, probably much more in fact, and just blow it up after one league game this year, I don't think would be his style at all. I also thought his comments midweek about name-checking Bailey and Maguire were kind of taken slightly out of context. I didn't think they were to the detriment of Lindelof necessarily, or any kind of, pointed kind of statement. I think it was just the way the question was phrased, and he was talking about Bailly coming back to fitness. And I do think a lot of people, want to see that more agile defender with Maguire. However, I thought actually Maguire and Lindelof were both pretty good today in a team that, no one really played that well. And
well, that's what I wanted to touch on that, because ultimately I don't think you can really point to Lindelof and Maguire doing too much wrong, but at the same time our defence didn't look secure at basically any point in the game. So how much would you attribute that to the defenders themselves, or just the system, or the players around them, the fullbacks?
The defence is a system, whole team thing, right? And we just lacked in control, and when we were on the ball, we were rushing things. We weren't calming and slowing it down. We were giving silly fouls away and giving them territory for them to then push up the pitch. And I think the positions around them, the midfield and the fullbacks, were probably somewhat poor defensively. The one thing I would say is that we weren't pressing and aggressive enough as a team, I thought, other than to give too many fouls away. It was like clumsy pressing. And I just think that made for a really difficult situation. Because I agree, in isolation in their moments, they probably didn't too much wrong, but at the same time, they hit the post 5 times or so, and probably had a couple of other goals as well. So we clearly didn't defend well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the bulk of Brighton's chances, and obviously we're recording 10 minutes after, so this is purely from my Shore-based memory, but most of them seem to come down the flanks, and particularly the left flank. And there was a big continuous issue with Wan-Bissaka wanting to play on the penalty spot and be a third centre-back when there was no one outside him. We play with 2 very high wingers and we don't really ask them to track back all that much. And neither Pogba at the moment or Matic in general are immensely mobile. And I thought they did very, very, very little to shield the back four. And then the back four played really tight together, with the exception probably Luke Shaw. I thought he was the best of the defensive line, both on the ball and off the ball. But Wan-Bissaka was causing huge problems for us. I mean, the amount of times Trossard picked up the ball in the left-hand corner of the box and just had oceans of space. Solly March got plenty of chances that way as well. I think that's pretty much where all their big chances came from, and they should have scored at least 2 or 3 of them. So that was a huge... I mean, we've long had reservations about Wan-Bissaka positionally, and it was just mystifying to me that even when we were playing with 3 at the back, he still did it on 2 occasions, dived into the... And it's not... he's not going to pick up a man. You're talking Maguire and Lindelof are maybe marking 1 player, 2 players, and he wanting to go in there and help them out when he has to know. It'd be okay if there wasn't anyone on his shoulder, anyone hanging out wide, but there always is. So it's a big, big, big issue, and another black mark against his name, in my opinion. And then I also think, you have to look at the defence on the ball. And I thought today, across the board, maybe with the exception of Shaw, we were awful on the ball. The press, which was a good press, but not like a frenetic press that Brighton were putting on us, was just so successful. We were just pigeonholed into these little corners of the pitch, and then the individual quality of that kind of back 3 minus Shaw was just really exposed, and they just looked out of sorts, very little confidence, very little movement ahead of them to show for it, and it was abysmal watching us try and play out from the back today.
Yeah, I think the Wan-Bissaka one, I think before, when we were at 4-4-2, like he wasn't having a good game. I'm not even remotely trying to excuse him or anything, but I mean, Greenwood wasn't helping him at all, which is like, Greenwood's not really there to help him, I guess, but I think maybe when you're struggling as a right back, I play right back, obviously to the same level as Wan-Bissaka, but that's maybe, but if you're struggling, you expect like your winger to just come and help you, kind of thing. Like, I'm not having a good game, please come help me. And Greenwood wasn't really doing that, but like, still he should have been doing better. But then as soon as he went to 3 at the back, and he was still so narrow, it made zero sense to me. I really don't know what he was doing. And then Solly March was just giving the freedom of the whole left-hand side, basically. I thought he was actually man of the match today, was March. He was just up and down that wing brilliantly. I mean, there was a lot of press given to Lamptey before the start of the game, and I thought we did all right on him mostly, apart from the penalty, obviously. But I thought March was really good. You touched on Pogba as well and Matic. I thought Matic was probably one of our better players, if only for his on-the-ball stuff. I thought on the ball he was a lot more composed than everyone else. Pogba, though, absolute a waste of performance. Maybe he's not fit, maybe he's still overcoming his virus. But
if he's not fit, why is he starting?
Well, yeah, he just looks so sluggish. Like, everything he does, getting around the pitch, like on the ball, he does, like, he likes his quick turns. He doesn't really seem like he's got the ball to his feet very much. And then I've always maintained that he doesn't do a lot defensively anyway. Like, he gets back into position, but he's not exactly active in winning the ball or taking up the right position. He'll be a body back there, but you won't expect him to like really do much in terms of an actual contribution. Alex, Pogba, say something.
I actually see last season, post lockdown and post injury, he obviously came back into the team and was fantastic. But I think that initial period post lockdown, there has to be a little bit of context and consideration behind, because so many teams weren't prepared. There was a real lack of tempo, a lack of press from a lot of opposition. And it was credit to us that we were prepared and that we had, returned and recovered well. Credit to Ollie and credit to the team. But at the same time, I think those initial performances post lockdown, where we were dreaming over a future of Pogba and Bruno in the middle, I do wonder whether there's real credence to that longer term, because I thought he dropped off quite quickly. And maybe again it was a recovering from an injury situation, but then we've come back this season, it's the same. Obviously, there's concerns over his recent illnesses. Obviously, he tested positive for coronavirus, and we don't really know the impact that can have on people. Once they've recovered, once they're out of it, they're out of isolation, they're not a threat anymore in terms of being contagious, but we don't really know what the impact in terms of recovering from that is. And he clearly just doesn't seem on it right now.
I mean, we don't know what the impact, and I don't want to, minimise Pogba's coronavirus issues. However, I don't believe he was hospitalised. He may well have been asymptomatic. I just feel like if that was an issue, I don't think he'd be starting. Because if it was to have some kind of, and he's doing the running. He's not shirking in that responsibility. I agree with Imran that he's not really effective defensively, but he does the run. He just doesn't really do much when he actually is there. And I don't want to really, beat down on Pogba too much, because I think he just needs to wind up basically and get fitness. I mean, he clearly looks unfit. He looks leggy. He looks slow. He looks lethargic, and it's affecting his touch. It's affecting his passing. I'm gonna give him a pass for probably another couple of games until we see more of a sample, because he's undeniably our best midfielder. He's one of the best players at the club, technically and athletically and everything really. So I'd give him a little bit of a bye ball, and I want to see that kind of come through. Although there are consistency issues that are predate this season by a long way. But instead, I'd use it as a stick to beat Ole. Why is he starting, and why is he maintaining these minutes? Yeah. I mean, he was god awful, and not god awful in he's having a stinker. He was a detriment to the team today. He was just giving the ball away so cheaply, so constantly. He was playing other people into trouble constantly, that directly led to goals, and the penalty was overturned and whatever else. And I thought, we got to half time, and I thought, please, for the love of God, sub him off. And then the 15 minutes he got in the second half, he got even worse. I mean, I counted him give the ball away 8-9 times for the simplest passes going forwards, and he was trying to play them on the outside of the foot, and they were just going, just like 2 yards away from an unmarked man, which is at that level. I mean, you so rarely see that. Like, you see it maybe once a game, just as a complete freak. He was doing it he did it 10 times in that one game. I mean, it was just abysmal, and I just can't understand. I wonder, is Pogba's stardom and contractual issues and stuff like that a feature for Ole, or does he just want to play him out of this or play him in form, or does he just think he's so good that he has to keep him on the pitch all the time? Because, he was diabolical.
That, he did take him off.
Yeah. It was just, I just think, and I know it was 60 minutes. It wasn't like he kept him on for the full 90, but it wasn't good.
No, but for 60 minutes, that's early for Ole. To be fair, it's rare.
It is.
Rare he makes a sub before the 89th minute,
and then he didn't make his next sub for a very long time. I think well into the 80th minute possibly, which when I thought we looked completely out on our feet. So again, as I said at the start, he's very pragmatic. He takes a long-term approach. He clearly doesn't trust his squad. Trust seems to be a bit of an issue for Ole, I think, because that's the team that's his team. That's first 11. That's what played all last year. That's what played every game post-lockdown, to the point where in the Europa and the end of the Premier League, we just looked absolutely out on our feet, and we've started the season in exactly the same way. And that's not squad management, and that ain't looking too good on Ole at the moment.
And that is kind of a problem with Pogba, that when he's not playing well and he does misplace a few passes and he's not getting the basics right, he only tries to overcomplicate and make up for it, in very much a Steven Gerrard type of way. And at times that can be quite, it can be a good thing, because he's taking responsibility. He still continues to want it. He doesn't shy away from the game and getting on the ball, which is good. But also he doesn't seem to take note and be self-aware of his performance in a way that says, right, let's settle down, let's be calm, let's just get the basics right, be pragmatic about it, play some simple passes, keep it simple. That's not really his style, and it only seems to get worse and spiral with him. Which I think is quite concerning, because then when he's having a bad game, it only gets worse and worse. Generally, it's rare that he's able to turn it around.
I was kind of hoping that he would not start this game, but then start and the next Brighton game on Tuesday, because then he would be like the big man on the pitch basically, and I think he would actually thrive. That would be a good way to get him back up a bit. Like when he's the big man, then he would be demanding the ball in that kind of game against probably it's going to be their second 11. It's going to be our second 11. I thought that'd be a good game for him. But anyway, let's get into the minutiae of the game. I think we started poorly. Didn't really do much until we had an offside goal from Greenwood. It was actually a very nice move. It came out of nowhere, but it was a nice move, and they'd hit the post and bar twice before that. But then there was a penalty on Lamptey. Definite penalty. Anyone disagree? A foul on
Definite,
Fernandes?
yeah, absolutely.
Stonewall for me. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't really blame Fernandes too much because he's trying desperately to get out of the way. He just has to realise that there's another man covering, and Lamptey is not a person you want to kind of hedge your bets on in terms of a foot race. But it was just one of those. It was just one of those ones where it's unfortunate. It's not, it's not an awful clanger, I don't think, by Fernandes or anything like that. It's just one of those things.
No, I agree. And Mopé with the Panenka, De Gea looked suitably pissed off, which he should be, really. I guess if you're getting...
Yeah, they were taking the absolute piss, right? They started so much... And this is something that has been there since Ollie joined the club and has been really prevalent, even in recent months, even during that unbeaten run, that we start really fucking slow. And I don't know what it is. And then the challenge with that is that we've never proven generally to really be able to turn it around. Obviously, today we did. I think there was that stat, was it against Crystal Palace, that, when we've been a goal down at half time, we've not been able, like under Ollie, we've never been able to recover and get a win from it. Now, today, luckily, we managed to equalise just before the half time point. So that curse didn't take place. We managed to just avoid that. But yeah, they were just basically taking the piss, just creating chances for fun. Getting the ball off was incredibly easy. We were just making frustrating fouls, as I said earlier, and then he tops it off with Panenka chip to really just take the piss and stick it in. And I think what happened at the end of the game was suitable karma for that, to be honest.
We'll get to that. But yeah, we did equalise straight away, which I guess shows some good fight, good spirit, I guess.
A little bit, however. It's a set piece where we're not normally very good. So I saw it as a bit of a Brighton slightly switched off. We got a fairly innocuous foul on Shaw. I don't even know that it was a foul, truly.
It's one of those you get out of the box but never in the box.
Yeah, and sometimes probably not outside the box either.
Not at all, yeah.
But it was good delivery, which was good to see Bruno make amends. I thought Matic did extremely well because he did. Oftentimes we have no one following in at the back post, and you just see a lot of our crosses that aren't actually bad crosses but kind of look like bad deliveries because they sail past everyone and go straight out. Whereas if you have a man making that later run, not necessarily looking to score themselves, but kind of doing that, well, what if I can put this back into play kind of thing. He did extremely well. Maguire, I think you have to give him a bit of credit, even though it's no OG, and it's good to see him, twice in this game having very, very important interactions in the opposition box, which is something I think we thought we'd get more of when you watch him in Leicester.
I did think he should have attacked that first ball coming in from Fernandes.
Yeah, I think he could have just scored. Yeah, exactly. Well, he might have scored. He probably wouldn't have. But yeah, it was fine. And to me, that was a lifeline because again, we didn't deserve that at that point of the game. They were dominant. They were much more expressive. They were much more a unit, and their plan was so much better than ours, as well as them looking sharper and fitter.
I mean, Lallana was just running around the pitch being a knob. That's all he was doing.
I was just watching it thinking Lallana's the best midfielder on this pitch right now, and that is tough to take.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, no, I don't think our midfielders did us any favours at all. Bruno, I mean, he was good in his little isolated incidents, but then as an overall 90 minutes, I don't think he really brought much to the table. A lot of misplaced passes again, even if he has that quality that he can do things like for our second goal and put that beautiful ball in for Rashford, who had a disallowed goal just before that for offside when he really shouldn't have been offside. He could see the ball from Greenwood coming.
I also thought for the Greenwood goal he shouldn't have been offside. And I thought
I'll give him a bit of credit there because he's trying to be in line with the defender, who's obviously matching his run and stepping up and stuff. He could be, and plus he's trying to run onto it.
He is, but he's peeling out wide, so he has the view, if you know what I mean. He's kind of at the corner edge of the box, so he's not like he's in amongst 3 or 4 different players. He has that, and it's a fairly, Martial creates a great little bit of space for himself, great bit of dribbling. He doesn't have to do everything at breakneck speed because it's just at that point where Martial's gotten free, so you don't really have to move at all. You just need to receive the ball. I would probably give him one or other. Both really frustrated me, and I thought, obviously we'll talk about his goal, which was just fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
If only he made up for it, Colm.
It kind of wipes the slate clean because I thought apart from that he still showed the same issues that we've been seeing for the last kind of 2 or 3 months. But the 2 offsides really irked me. for no reason more so than I had Greenwood, my fantasy football team. So like that was a perfectly good goal. There was just no reason to be offside there. And then the Greenwood slipped in the ball for him in the, I don't even know in what sequence that came. Would that have been the fourth goal? Who even knows?
But it's still a good sign that he's making that. It's still a good sign that he's making that run. He's playing that ball. He's scoring that opportunity for the second offside. And yeah, they were offsides, but it's still better than maybe what we've seen from him previously.
Yeah.
True. And then for the goal, it was just, I mean, it was all about Rashford, really. It was a good ball from Bruno, to be fair, but I mean, just leaving Ben White on his ass twice.
I felt really bad for Ben White. I really like him, and I think he's a very good defender. And he's just, I mean, to come back in on his left, I mean, if the block puts that ball over, you're going mad at Rashford. But it didn't, so you just have to say it's an exceptional piece of forward play. Although I didn't think Ben White covered himself in glory on the first, he let him come inside very easy onto his right. But it was a great goal. I thought the ball from Bruno was brilliant. I just don't understand why we can't play that ball more often. That ball, Liverpool play into the challenge for Mane and Salah so frequently. They're so designed to do it, and they manage to create those kind of situations where the deep player can kind of whip a ball in behind maybe 10 or 15 times per game. That happened for us once in that game, and I just think that's kind of a structural issue or a coaching issue where we're not putting ourselves in those positions, because that shouldn't actually be. It shouldn't always just happen on a breakdown. That you should be able to manufacture that scenario more frequently than we manage to, I think.
It's not often, to be fair, though, that we come up against defences who are going to sit on the halfway line like that against our speed. I mean, that's the one thing you know about our attackers, is they're very, very fast.
Yeah.
So I think sitting on the halfway line is not something we come across that often. But it will happen in games like when stuff breaks down, and we should be able to take advantage of it like we did there. Alex, anything on the goal? I mean, it was just excellent play, really.
It was just brilliant. Well, it just shows what a goal against Luton at the end of the game can do from midweek, because he's not scoring that goal today without that one in midweek, I don't think. There was just some confidence back. He had the ball under control. He knew what he wanted to do, and there was a bit of arrogance there in that he was ignoring his options, and that he was going to use his options to his advantage and take the piss out of the defender a little bit, and had confidence in his ability to do that and to finish, which was something that he did multiple times this season. There was a number of times last season where he would cut the ball back or chop it or whatever it needed to be in the box to create himself an angle and to wrong foot a defender or keeper. And to see that back, I think is a fantastic sign that hopefully he's returning to a bit of form. So it was just brilliant play, fantastic goal. Obviously, the deflection takes a little bit of shine off it. Only a little bit.
It was going in
so
anyway.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. But still, fantastic.
And I guess you want these moments from of brilliance from attack when they're not really playing very well. I mean, Martial didn't have a good game again, but he did have that one moment in the first half where he wriggled out of type space. Greenwood had a few flashes, but really, I think they're all looking like they're just kind of getting up to speed again, which we kind of need to do quickly because they are our main. They're the best thing about our team really is our attack.
Well, I thought they were probably the most controlled. There were a few times where we were breaking and they would slow it down and play it between them or play it wide and into space rather than going for the juggler. And it seemed like the rest of our team wasn't able and capable to do that. And that your goal scoring hungry forwards, who were also all quite young and whatnot, to be the ones doing that is, I think tells a bit of a story in all honesty.
Also, I think before the game I had huge reservations about us being able to deal with Brighton, but I was more concerned about them keeping us out than all the problems that they would cause us going forward. I didn't necessarily think that was going to be as devastating. Everyone was talking about Lamptey and him, having a joy of a time down the right, and that didn't really transpire. It was much more down the left that they caused us issues. But I mean, Ben White and Lewis Dunk, I think, are both really, really, really strong defenders. I think the two wing backs are extremely good. You mentioned Solly March going forward and Lamptey, but I think they're also very diligent defensively and get a real good press on. So, that's a pretty decent Premier League defence. It's not, it's definitely upper half, and good one-on-one in lots of areas, although Ben White, I'm sure, would like another go at that one for Rashford's goal. But
for the most part, they did keep us out, I think.
Yeah. Oh, we had very few chances.
We scored 3 goals, but, one of them was a set piece, one of them was a penalty off a set piece. right at the end of the game, and then
brilliance.
one's fantastic breakaway with some individual, and for the most part we had very little chances, right? And they did do a good job of keeping us out.
I actually think the front three looked okay. I think Martial was totally starved of attention and had a few uncharacteristic poor touches when he could have done a lot better. But I think, we were just pegged back by Brighton for nearly the lion's share of the game, it seemed to me, and we really didn't supply them with anything. I mean, that's really illustrated by the fact that I think we got our first corner in the 95th minute of the match. And I mean, that says a lot about Manchester United never wanting to get to the byline, which I think is, I've been screaming about it, that and fullbacks for, every pod forever. So we don't ever force those kind of corners, really. We're never a high scoring team in terms of corners. But I mean, the 95th minute before you even get one is really just indicative of how little ball we had around the penalty box and the bylines. Yeah. And I think that was more a supply issue. I mean, the front three weren't great, don't get me wrong. They definitely wasted opportunities. I thought Mason had the kind of game, although he scored a goal and an assist that Rashford just ballsed up for him, basically. He had one of those games where he looks like the youth product and not like the phenom that we all know he is, kind of thing. He still, I think, struggles to cope with the men's game. I think he struggles to manage his energy across 90 minutes. He looked absolutely dead on his feet throughout the entire second half, and sometimes he looks quite slow.
For Lingard to come on, which I don't often do, but
sometimes he looks quite slow and ploddy. But I appreciate it's kind of like the Pog thing. You want him on there just because you just want him to get that one opportunity, but. Broadly, I thought the front three were okay. It was just a supply big issue and a whole team shape where Brighton were just really much better than us in every facet of the game, really.
Oops. Yeah, and fair play to Potter. He's done a very good job down there. I thought they looked like a proper team, looked really well organised. Like you said, Colm, I think in Ben White and Dunk, I think they've got two very good defenders. And like you said, Alex, Potter will be coming from that game thinking how the hell they conceded 3 goals and only scored 2, really. It'd be a mystery. I mean, I guess they could take the positives from it, though, that they definitely deserve more. And I guess the worry for them is they had that game against Chelsea where they were probably the better team and still lost, and then they've had this game today where they've lost. But, I guess that's football. They did get their goal back after hitting the bar a gajillion times. Tossard hit both post and the bar, which I think is impressive. I think that deserves some sort of recognition.
Should be one goal, really, shouldn't it, if you hit the post 3 times?
Yeah, cumulative. I thought the one where he hit the bar, he should have done much, much, much better. The other two were kind of like, oh yeah, he hit the post, but it was never really going in kind of thing. Whereas the one the bar, he has the freedom of the whole left-hand side of the penalty box with Aaron Wan-Bissaka doing his best to mark Victor Lindelof. So, he doesn't need to wallop that so uncontrollably just like he does. And I rate him. He's a technical player. He's very good. He looks like he might have renal failure. I think he's very jaundiced, but he is generally, a very, very tidy player.
Dr. Colm in the house.
I would have expected him to take one of those chances.
The big chance he had was the one right in front of goal, where he put his swinger on it. I think either side of the hair, that definitely goes in.
Yeah.
And that was the one. I thought, to be fair, when that happened, I thought we'd got away with it then. Because I don't know, whenever we're watching United and we're like 1 goal ahead, I always think they're going to get one chance.
Yeah.
And it's whether that chance goes in or not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't.
Yeah, I think that was like the 85th minute, and I was like, "Whew, it's fine. It's going to be okay."
There was the one that hit the right post and then trickled back. Well, not really trickled, actually.
That was 80 minutes, Alex. That was like way before that.
I'm just saying that one chance where like if they haven't scored that, they're not going to score, sort of thing. And you were hoping that missing one of those chances would take the wind out of them, because there was also the one where it sort of scrambles around and then someone's basically in a position where they've got the whole net and only De Gea in front of him. They just hit it straight at De Gea.
That's literally what we're talking about, Alex.
I thought you were on about the post. Let's go back 2 minutes. Cut it out.
Basically, the takeaway here is Brighton should have won that game by a margin, I think.
A long way.
I think that is the takeaway. But then they got the goal at the end. I mean, who would know that Solly March would be on that? It's not like he hadn't been there before a few times. I mean, no one could have expected it, really. And came in. To be fair, as soon as he did it, I screamed, Wan-Bissaka, what the fuck? But it was actually Bruno who let him go. Wan-Bissaka had
I think it's both.
Go on.
So Bruno picks up the run because he looks at Wan-Bissaka and sees that he's nowhere near the man he should be marking. Again, Wan-Bissaka is marking Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire, and now Eric Bailly on the penalty spot, just because he likes to be with his mates, I think. So you can kind of see Bruno's at the kind of top of the day at the penalty box, and you can see he sees Solly March coming in and realises that Aaron Wan-Bissaka is nowhere near where he should be, and then he makes that move, and he actually seems to pick him up. Now I do agree, Bruno doesn't do well, but he's a very conscientious runner, a very conscientious marker, and he makes the effort to go and pick him up, and he kind of does pick him up, and then he just switches off again, and both of them, Solly March takes like 2 steps, headers it in, and Wan-Bissaka and Bruno just kind of both look at each other statuesque, 2 yards back the way. And I think it's equal. Obviously once Bruno takes responsibility for that, he has to. I mean, Wan-Bissaka he has his back to it. As far as he's concerned, there isn't a back post in football. It just doesn't exist. And he just wants absolutely no part of it. So, it's to me, I think Wan-Bissaka is worse because he's the defender and he's done it 8 times already in the match. So why is someone not in the game screaming at him? Why is Ole? Is this tactical? Or are we saying really, really, really pinch in? Because I just think, and thinking we can like funnel them out and that a player receiving it out wide is not as dangerous as it dropping to someone in the box. But it's not like in these instances they're flooding the box. It just seems to be like extra cautious for no reason, or he just feels like he has to move and gravitate in, and he's not even conscious of it.
That's one thing I wanted to come to is our communication at the back. We've seen a few of these types of goals where who's picking him up, he's picking him up. I mean, the goal against Sevilla comes to mind straight away. And do we have that communication at the back? Is someone going to Wan-Bissaka saying, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, he's there, he keeps being unmarked. Sort it out." Like, I don't know if we even have that.
I just think in the halcyon days of Keno and Neville and then Vidic and Rio, if that happens once or twice in the first half as it did, I just can't imagine that isn't just absolutely had out on the pitch. Do you know what I mean? And then Wan-Bissaka is left, but for something to repeat itself, and then also say, Ole's sitting looking at it on an iPad, I can imagine, over and over again, because he seems to watch that screen more than he watches the match. But are we not passing messages to players anymore? Are we not giving touchline instructions? Just to me, how that can go unchecked. And I would like for someone to go back through that game and pull out all the times that Brighton received the ball inside our box in the left wing with Wan-Bissaka 5 metres away from that player, because it literally must have been 5 or 6 times. And it should have resulted.
Well, he had that volley, didn't he, beforehand?
Yeah, there was the Solly March volley, there was the Trossard one that hit the bar, there was
loads.
Honestly, I couldn't recount them, and that's why I'm saying you could literally have a minute-long highlight reel of just that issue, and that is for that not to be managed within a game, spoken about on the touchline, spoken about on the pitch, spoken about at half-time, you then have a 5 at the back and it's still happening.
But it's poor that Wan-Bissaka himself isn't aware and reacting to it. But all of them, there should be collective responsibility. It seems so obvious to everybody watching that it seems... Yeah, I don't understand how no one has picked up on that and caused a scene, but it's also just so symptomatic and something that we see so often, and I think that's what frustrates me the most. And it's kind of like this whole game you could put into a category of, it was the second game, we still had some players returning for the first time, although you look at Matic's first game and he was probably best player, right? But anyway, you can sort of ignore some of the woes and you can say, right, it was just about getting the win. We move on. We'll get better with time as we get fitness into the legs. But actually, if we're honest, this has been true for the past few years, that we just don't really have that control, that we do keep continuing to make mistakes. There's no leadership or anyone taking responsibility to call out on these things and to make a change in the game. And also we were again relying on either individual brilliance or mistakes from the opposition, and that was the undoing of the other team once again.
Sometimes I find, watching Brighton today, it was like, wow, what a plan, and a limited team, okay, a decent team, but just, well structured, well coached, everyone knows their role, their press, so systematic. McManaman kept saying it in commentary that Brighton are forcing us, and I think Rio said at half-time, to play in the areas where they want us to play. They know when they're pressing that Maguire's going to turn around and play it to Lindelof, and then they press Lindelof, and they know that Lindelof's not going to make that progressive pass forward, that he's going to turn and play it to Wan-Bissaka, and then they go, because they know Wan-Bissaka is an absolute bomb square with his feet, as we saw for their first goal to the penalty, which I think was, Lord knows what he was doing, trying to dribble out there, but it was just so structured. And then when it came into midfield, they were biting in, and then they had that defensive rigidity. They had their wing backs. You just saw what Graham Potter wanted. That match for him, tactically, perfection. And it's a mystery. That it will be a mystery to him how he's managed to lose it, because everything they would have wanted to do to us before the match kicked off, they did to us, and it worked to perfection. They had more shots on target, they had more corners, they had more possession, I think they had more control of the game.
They hit the bar more times than we shot.
Yeah, they hit the frame of the goal, not necessarily the bar, but more times than we had shots on target. So it could not have gone better for him. And any other day, they convert on those chances. And I was just watching it thinking, why don't we have that? Or why are we so bad at what we are trying to implement? And this vision that Ole has for playing out from the back with this double pivot with the 3 and the 1 ahead of that, and the wing play that's non-existent, the fullback adventure that's non-existent, which I think is so required to play that system. And I'm like, what are we? It seems like we're banging our head off a wall a wee bit with it, and yet we're sticking so rigidly to it and trying to purchase players that will fit that system rather than making amendments for the players that we have that are also quite recent in the club. And a lot of it is fitness, don't get me wrong. A lot of it is a grueling schedule last year running into a grueling schedule this year, and fatigue. I do think it's a huge part of it. However, the lack of energy and the lack of mobility and the kind of malaise that's over quite a few players at the moment, for me, doesn't whitewash the same tactical issues and the same poor plan that I see on so many occasions.
Well, isn't our plan basically just
express yourself,
good players
go out there?
Well?
Yeah, I do think it's a bit like that. Yeah. And that's not enough. That's not good enough.
The counter-argument, I'm not saying this is my argument, but the counter-argument is that if you're a team like Brighton and you have quote-unquote poorer players, you have to therefore come up with a system that manages these poor players into something that's effective for football, whereas if you're a big club, quote-unquote...
No, that's like nonsense.
But that is nonsense, because City have a system, Liverpool have a system, and they're both completely different, and yet they're both extremely successful with the points totals that they've been able to harbour over the last few years. Chelsea have an identifiable way of playing and a system that combats what they face.
I don't know about that.
I think they do. They just have defensive issues. However, what I would say is, it doesn't really matter if you're, if Potter just has a plan. Yes, of course you have to set up to stop a team more than you have. It's easier to set up to stop a team than it is to set up a team to play really well and score loads of goals. That's a given. That's why teams don't just score loads of goals all the time. It's much more complicated than that. It's easier to do 2 banks of 4 and all that kind of stuff. The converse to that argument, I would say, is that, do you think teams have to think or work very hard to create a plan and execute it to prevent us from creating chances and scoring goals? Because I think there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that we've seen when we play lower half teams that sit in that suggests they do not. I actually think, particularly watching the Crystal Palace game, now Brighton have their own system, which I think they stick to no matter who they're playing, essentially, and that's much more credit to Potter. But if you look at Palace last week, we didn't put them under pressure at all. They were so easy with just slipping into 2 banks of 4, working hard, and knowing that if they just keep funneling us out to the wings and pressing us when we have it at the back, that they're in with a very good shout of restricting our chances and making their own chances off the back of those turnovers. And to me, Premier League clubs, lower half Premier League clubs or middle of the table Premier League clubs, any team that doesn't want to come and play with us is going to be like, happy days, here's United this weekend, because see what everyone's been able to do to them. We can do that too, because it's easy, and we're professional footballers, and we're professional athletes, and we can run around for 90 minutes and press, and when we get loads of space on the break, and that's not a hard plan to come up with. So therefore it is incumbent on us. That's where it becomes not good enough to say, boys, go out and express yourselves, boys, we let the quality show. Because if it's so easy to gum us up, then you need something more than just, guys, do what you want, feel yourself, and you can't just rely on Rashford doing that every week, because he ain't going to do that every week.
And it's also indicative of the problem with the excuse that is so often brought up, that we haven't got the depth and we haven't got the quality of players, and we don't have the talent that other clubs have. And it's like, yeah, but we've got a better team than Brighton, we've got a better team than Palace. We've got a better team than 15 of the clubs in the Premier League. Exactly, but those clubs come, either come to Old Trafford or whether we're playing them, wherever it is, it doesn't matter. But they more often than not seem to dictate the game. I think you were saying this about last week's pod. You just know from the very beginning what how the game's going to go, and I think that's because it depends on the opposition. If the opposition turn up and they've clearly got a plan and they're putting us under a bit of pressure, then generally we seem to falter to that and not have too much of a response to it. And obviously today we've managed to get that win. I definitely knew today that we would score a goal after the final whistle to win the game. I mean, I just knew from the first minutes that was going to happen. It was just so apparent to me. Imran, let's get to the fun. Let's get to the fun stuff. Well, that's what I was going to say. Forget all your doom mongering. Yeah, that's it. This was a vintage Man United win. So yeah, Brighton scored in the 94 minutes and 20 seconds. I think it was something like that. Crazy. And then somehow we get a corner. We actually go press forward and get a corner. Apparently the ball might have gone out of play before Van der Beek controlled it, but I haven't seen it back, and it probably didn't, so I don't care. And then Mopé, for some bizarre, literally, I cannot understand for the life of me what Mopé's thinking there. Especially in the world that, these players know that VAR exists now, right? They know it's a thing. So they know, surely they can't possibly think, I'm going to get away with this. It's baffling. I'm glad he did it.
But it's really like, that is, I mean, if you're Potter there, you have to be.
You'd be furious, absolutely furious.
That's the stupidest thing. Like, you're not going to get away with it anymore.
It definitely is, and for me, it's a slight touch, but it's a stonewall penalty. Once you see,
it's a definite penalty. He's literally trying to punch the ball off his head.
What you have to remember is Neil Maupay pretty much needs a vote to challenge Harry Maguire in the air, so he really had to thrust himself up there. He just doesn't need to go and challenge him. Basically, it was silly, obviously. I saw people saying like justice for Lindelof, etc. That to me is a penalty, whereas Lindelof wasn't. Not all handballs are equal, that just was. But I didn't see it. But you heard the shouts of the players immediately.
Yeah.
Like immediately.
You can kind of tell when it's a penalty by how players are appealing, I guess. Especially when it's handball. Like, there's always the half-assed handball appeal, and then there's the when you run to the ref and you're grabbing your arm. Like, this is a hand, referee. Look at my hand. This is what it is. So yeah, I mean. Here's a question for you then. This happens, and Pogba steps up to take the penalty. Ugh. How are you feeling?
I feel sick.
I mean, I am very grateful that we now have the best penalty taker in the world, basically.
What a penalty as well.
Doesn't it make life a lot easier?
It's so much so.
He knows it's last kick of the game. He knows that it's there for the win. And also, like, he had to wait a fucking age before he took it. Like all the factors of it being a huge game, and I guess there's no fans right now, and I'm sure that makes somewhat of a difference. But even so, like, just a fucking fantastic penalty, and yeah, obviously he gave that penalty away earlier in the game as well, so it was nice too. And like I said, it was fucking absolute karma that he gave that penalty away for his Panenka earlier in the game. I'm convinced that if he'd taken a really simple penalty earlier in the game,
what you got against Panenkas?
I've got nothing against them, but I think to do it against a United team early on in a game, there's some arrogance behind that, and I quite like that.
Disrespectful.
I respect that he did that in a way. He's taking the piss against, supposedly one of the biggest clubs in the world, and you feel confident enough to be able to do that, and you don't mind riling them up and whatnot. And there's a nice arrogance about that, but at the same time, I also think that comes with a bit of pressure on you.
But then he also did the crying face celebration to an empty stand. I mean, I just don't understand. I don't understand what the point of it was. Obviously, it's for TV, but like, who's crying? I mean,
well, he was at the end of the game.
He was at the end of the game, and also I think he had that whole, wasn't it Moypay who had that whole debacle with Guendouzi when Arsenal played them last year,
which was hilarious.
It was hilarious. Neither of them came out of it particularly well, and again, he just seems to be doubling down on the Premier League's biggest shithouse, basically, or smallest. Well,
he is the player that if he plays for you, you love him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But because he doesn't, he's an absolute knob.
Just needs to stop waving those hands around. But what a penalty. I mean, he just smashes it in. And the balls on Bruno are unbelievable. And, it was a very Bruno performance for me. Such a contribution in terms of the assist for Rashford's goal, the penalty at one end, and then taking that last minute penalty. And yet, during the game, outside of those sharp moments, he was pretty dreadful. Gave the ball away loads. But I just don't even care. I just let him do whatever he wants. He's fantastic. And he's still just padding the stats in the most ridiculous way, but an unbelievable, and also just like having a VAR shout after the final whistle was blown, I found hilarious. Other hilarious point was Lewis Dunk trying to hold Bruno's hand the whole time, and Fred basically trying to chin him as he was doing it. There was just so much value in that last 10 minutes.
Well, I mean, we should probably say that VAR actually had
a good game.
Great game.
Yeah. Brilliant game today. Like that penalty on Connolly for Pogba was never a penalty.
No,
I think anyone who's looking at that, and I think as soon as the ref, you knew as soon as the ref went over, he would see that and think, nah, that's not a foul.
No, but at the same time, there are definitely refs in the Premier League that would have just stuck to their guns.
I think maybe one or two, but I think generally most would look at that and think that's not a foul. But last year, I don't think the VAR official would have said anything to him. Which is we're in a much better position now where the referee can go look at it, and it becomes his decision. Then it's on him. He's the one overruling himself, and he's the one coming out with credit.
But you would have thought that last week, right? You would have thought that the ref would go over to the screen. He would see that it was Lindelof's arms down by his side. It's just natural running motion that and he still gave it. So. Yeah.
I had a lot of faith last week that it was going to be overturned. I was like, happy days, he's going to the sideline, common sense is going to prevail. Although what I would say is handball is different to contact and challenges. and that's a new rule, a new interpretation of the rule this year for handball, that basically any touch in the box, and they're not really sure how to interpret this natural movement and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's slightly different, with probably
I'd agree with that.
The ref last week having maybe some briefings, in the off season from, the powers that be about handball fresh in his memory, thinking, I have to give this. Whereas I think with that Pogba one today, real time, I thought it actually looked a penalty. But when it was slowed down, it was so obvious it wasn't penalty. And then he had it for Maguire as well. And I was like, Connolly, just stop trying to. You're obviously not an amazing footballer, and you don't fancy yourself to just take the chances. So you're just getting in front of people and then falling over. It's just, to me, they were both dives, and I don't mean dive in a Ashley. I was about to call him Ashley Dive, Ashley Young kind of way, but in he's probably within his powers to do that. Yeah, exactly. But he is definitely trying to win the penalty. It's just get up.
The thing that mystifies me about this handball thing, just to go on a bit of a tangent, is that when we come to we're talking about fouls and stuff, there is always you interpret it as a referee. You interpret what's foul and what's a foul, what's not a foul. But then for handballs, we're trying to make it so black and white. This is handball, this isn't handball. It's why? Most of football is all about the referee's interpretation.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they're trying to move this handball away to this is a definite handball. This is definitely not. It makes just leave it to the refs again to interpret what should be and what shouldn't be a handball.
2 or 3 seasons ago, were we going, this handball rule is a joke. This needs changed.
Exactly.
It wasn't a thing. There was maybe 1 or 2 a year where you're it's probably not a handball, or it is a handball. But broadly, that ref's interpretation, 8 times out of 10 was yep, okay, it's not really a handball. He couldn't move. It's too close to him, or he's just sliding for a challenge. So it wasn't there was this big, demand for this rule to be looked at. I just think they have to have something every year, to justify their existence.
I think people got really annoyed because it was deliberate handball. But I think everyone accepted it doesn't really mean, what it means is
cheating.
Whether it's yeah, exactly. Whether you put your hand in a place where it's should be handball. Everyone kind of knew what it meant, but then they were oh no, we can't say deliberate because that means you actually want to punch the ball. It's that's not really what anyone means. It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, VAR, good today. Well done. We like you today. And also worth noting, we've had 3 penalties in our games in the first 3 games. So penalty United isn't going away whether it's for or against us. No, 4 penalties now. Sorry, 4 penalties in 3 games. So yeah. I think we'll have a lot more of them as the season goes on. Anything else on the game before we move on?
It's just a fucking mad bonkers game, but I'm so pleased that we got the fucking win for it, because it was an incredibly important 3 points, and the pressure would have really built if we didn't get those points today. It was totally undeserved, but at the end of the season we won't remember that. Every point that you get, it doesn't matter how you got it right. So I do think it talks to a much wider and typical problem that we've seen in terms of coaching and tactics and structure and the like, but ultimately in the context of second game of the season, recovering from a loss in the opener, it was just incredibly important to get those 3 points. So
I thought when we were 2-1 down, and I assumed that the match was just going to play out, this was in the 93rd minute. Yeah, sorry, 2-1 up, and it was the 93rd minute, and I was in the shower thinking, happy days, blow up, this is fine.
Stop giving people that image.
Do you think Ollie takes his iPad into the shower?
Yeah, definitely. Tactics. I was thinking, do you know what? We've been absolutely stinking here. Completely played off the park by Brighton. Should have probably lost, but actually maybe that's the best way today could have gone. The 3 points was the absolute most important thing. I think a loss or a draw is disaster. Just to start the game with 1 out of 6, or start the league with 1 out of 6. Is a disaster. So I just thought, maybe that's the best way to actually win in a kind of a gritty hold-out performance. We've been poor. Fitness is still an issue, so you can kind of still use the performance as motivation, as in, lads, you were absolutely stinking, we need to do so much more, but you still have the 3 points. So I was actually thinking, God, this is actually probably the best way this could have worked out moving forward. And then you had the whole other thing where I thought we'd then drop points, and I was like, oh, this is obviously a dreadful result, and then we have the goal. It's great, it's hilarious, it's a real moment. I mean, I don't know how you all felt, but that was just it was an awful game of football from our perspective. Insane. But it was a mad game of football, and it's rare you get those feelings and those
I don't want to know about the feelings you have in the shower, Colm.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, to be fair, the rush you get from the last minute, it's
just something else.
Drawn is just, I mean, you can't beat that. I think that's why we all watch football.
You're sick to your stomach watching it, because if Bruno misses it, that's such a highlight on him, or low light on him, or spotlight on the same. Well, he doesn't exactly.
So I would no concerns, right?
The other really interesting thing is that this is now possibly the biggest grudge in football history. We play these guys again on Wednesday, I think. Is that not just class? I mean, the drama of it is just going to go on for another probably awful 90 minutes of football.
Is it Wednesday or Tuesday?
Could be one of the two. I don't know. It's midweek, but that's it's probably the biggest rivalry in football right now. It's huge.
Well, yeah, I was going to say we celebrate a win against Palace with a win against Brighton with a trip to Brighton. It'll be a completely different 11, probably, apart from Maguire, because Maguire has to play every game. I mean, it's really difficult to know. Like, Brighton will probably change completely. We'll change completely. It's going to be a totally different game. So it's really hard to kind of say anything. I think we'll see what happens. I thought we played all right against Luton. Someone correct me. Luton, same place. We played really well. I thought we played all right against Luton. I thought there was a bit too much doom-mongering about that performance, considering half of those players hadn't kicked the ball for ages. And I thought we played all right. I thought showed some good energy in Fred and Lingard. I thought Matt had some nice touches. It was all right game. Nothing to write home about. Then we just brought on the big boys to just score some on the break at the end when they were pushing forward. So I don't know if anyone has anything overly insightful to say about the game on Tuesday/Wednesday.
No.
Sancho debut?
No, unlikely. I'm going to go unlikely.
Are you still 97% on that one, Colm? Is that still happening? Nailed on?
I think it may happen, although I'm much less confident than I was. And I'll be super disappointed if it doesn't happen. Although it's a talk for another day, and there will be a transfer pod, I think, on the 6th, the day after the window closes, because I think we do have to just wait out and see. I don't want to make a fool of myself by making any early predictions or chastising the board too soon. But I think transfer pod on the 6th, so that'll definitely be coming.
Well, yeah, we are playing Spurs on next weekend, so they are playing today or tomorrow. God, I really should have looked up at Spurs fixtures. I get bored of Spurs. They're at home to Newcastle. So, I mean, we can't really tell much from that, but they had a good win last week where Kane and Son scored a gajillion goals between them. It'll be a tough game. I'd say we're at home, but doesn't really make a difference these days. We beat them there last year. We beat them last year 2-1. Rashford's got both.
He said we wouldn't allow the Amazon Prime cameras in.
Yes.
Not allowed into the fortress that is Old Trafford.
On that glorious documentary.
Yeah.
Jose is such a weirdo. He's a raving weirdo, is Jose.
I thought he came across quite well on that, considering.
I think he came across well, but I think he's an absolute madman.
Well, you've probably got to be in a way, to be a successful football coach.
And I think we knew that before the documentary, in fairness.
And of course, there's also, they clearly have. I'm sure that they've got vetoes and they have full
editing.
Yeah, full editing rights before anything goes up. But no, I enjoyed that documentary. I think Spurs are going to be quite decent actually this season. I think they're going to do well. It's hard to back against Jose in his second season. He's always done well in his second season. I think until United, he basically always won a title, and even with United, he came second, didn't he? And they haven't really been spoken about for that top four. For those top four positions, but I think they're going to be a real challenge actually.
Yeah, they might have that Reguilon playing against us. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Anyone want to give light predictions? Again, it's hard to say. I mean, they could lose. They lost to Newcastle last year at home. They could do the same tomorrow. We won't know.
I think it'll be a draw.
I think we'll beat Brighton and Spurs.
There you go. I think we will lose to Brighton and draw to Spurs. That's how positive and I am about these things. You know what? For some reason in football, I never think you can beat a team twice in a row. I don't know why.
It's awful playing teams back to back, particularly when it means something. Like if you play them in the league and then play them in like an FA Cup semi, like I think we maybe did with City once. It's like you may as well just decide between yourselves who wants which one. Do you know what I mean? Because one of you is going to win one and the other one's going to win the other.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the one that books out when we played Chelsea in the league, and then 2 Champions League semi-finals or quarter-finals either side of it, and we won them both, which was a great time back in the day. Before we go, how many people are going to sign for next weekend? Colm?
2.
Alex?
None.
Oh, I'll go 1. Nicely in the middle. So yeah, I'll do it for this week. As always, follow us on Twitter at United Hour.
Leave us a review on iTunes.
Give us a review on iTunes.
That'd be real cool. A good one. Yeah, a good one.
If you're going to give us 4 stars, don't bother. Just put 1 extra on there. 5 stars. If you're going to give us 1 star, don't bother. Give us 5 stars. Tell us we're shit, but 5 stars. There you go. And maybe if you do, I might come back on for another podcast.
Wow.
Actually, that's probably not
Don't
an
say
incentive.
that.
This is my 1 podcast for the year.
Don't get our hopes up.
All right, guys. Say goodbye.
Cheerio.
Throw.